15 silver, the scarred buyer said, staring at Ava as if she were livestock already belonging to him. No one challenged his bid. Then, the entire marketplace went silent. People dropped to their knees as a terrifying presence moved through the crowd. Ava's weakened wolf stirred for the first time in months. A cold voice cut through the silence. 100 gold. The Alpha King had come to the auction, and for reasons Ava could not understand, he wanted the rejected Omega no one else would buy. Chapter 1. The iron shackles around Ava's wrists had already rubbed her skin raw, but she had stopped caring about small pains long ago. She stood on a wooden platform in the middle of the marketplace with her head lowered, watching the shadows of potential buyers move around her feet like circling vultures. "Next lot," the auctioneer shouted, his voice slicing through the morning air. He seized Ava roughly by the chin and forced her face upward. Female, 22 years old, house-trained, literate. His fingers tightened as he turned her head from side to side for the crowd. Decent teeth, all limbs intact. A little thin, but proper feeding should fix that. Heat spread across Ava's cheeks. Humiliation still hurt, even after everything else she had survived. But she did not struggle. Resistance only made suffering worse. She had learned that lesson months earlier when raiders destroyed her pack. The strongest wolves had been killed. The weakest had been captured and sold. Ava had somehow fallen somewhere between the two, which meant she had survived long enough to stand here. Starting bid, 50 silver. The auctioneer waited. No one answered. Silence stretched across the marketplace. 50 silver might as well have been 50 gold. Ava saw the judgment in every face. Too thin, too ordinary, too damaged by hunger and captivity. Most buyers barely looked at her before turning away. 30 silver, the auctioneer tried again. Several men stepped closer. Their eyes traveled over Ava with the detached calculation of people examining livestock. She knew exactly what they were considering. Kitchen labor, field work, something cheap, something replaceable. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. She was trained as a healer, the auctioneer added, desperation creeping into his voice. Knows herbs, bone setting, birthing work. Laughter scattered through the crowd. "Why would wolves need a healer when we have claws and fast healing?" someone called. "Waste of silver," another man said. Then a gravelly voice came from the crowd. 20. Ava's blood turned cold. The man who stepped forward was broad and heavily scarred. His teeth were yellow, and his thick hands looked far more familiar with breaking bones than mending them. His gaze stripped over her. The cruel smile that followed told Ava exactly what awaited her if he won. Endless labor, beatings, punishment for every mistake, a life counted in bruises. 20 silver from Gareth, the auctioneer announced with obvious relief. "Do I hear 25? Nothing." Gareth smiled and reached for his money. Then he reconsidered. 15. The auctioneer blinked. "Sir?" "Look at her." Gareth gestured toward Ava as though she were already a burden. "She's half dead. She'll be lucky to survive winter. Surely. 20. 15, or I walk." Ava closed her eyes. She tried to collect what little strength remained inside her. Maybe she could survive Gareth if she worked hard enough. If she obeyed. If she stayed invisible. 15 silver, the auctioneer said reluctantly. "No one else wants her," Gareth interrupted. "And you know it." The auctioneer opened his mouth to answer. Then he stopped. A strange tension swept across the marketplace. Ava's wolf stirred weakly inside her. Something had changed. Power entered the air. Raw. Overwhelming. It carried the scent of fear and awe from everyone around her. Ava's skin prickled. Every instinct she possessed ordered her to lower her head, make herself smaller, and submit. The very air seemed heavier. Conversation stopped in the middle of sentences. Laughter vanished. Even children who had been crying suddenly went quiet. "My king," someone whispered. Another voice breathed, "The Alpha King." Ava almost refused to believe it. But against every lesson survival had taught her, she lifted her eyes. The crowd was dividing. Men and women dropped to their knees as a single figure walked between them with controlled, predatory grace. The auctioneer had gone completely pale. His hands shook against his podium. Then Ava saw him. 100 gold. The voice was deep, cold, and final. Ava's eyes widened. Her weakened wolf immediately pressed low in instinctive submission, while her human mind struggled to understand what had just happened. 100 gold. For her, the man stood taller than most of the wolves surrounding him. Dark hair fell across a face made of hard lines and sharper angles. His clothes were expensive without being decorative, the clothing of someone powerful enough that he never needed to prove his wealth. The Alpha King. Ava's knees almost failed beneath her. She had never seen him in person. She did not need an introduction. Everyone knew him. The conqueror of the Northern Territories. The wolf who had built an empire on the bodies of his enemies. Why would a king like that want her? "Oh, 100 gold?" The auctioneer stammered. "My lord, are you certain?" The Alpha King's golden eyes shifted toward him. "You question your king's word?" The temperature in the marketplace seemed to fall. "No, my lord, never." Gareth had turned white. "My lord," he ventured, "I had first claim." The king barely looked at him. "You had nothing." Gareth swallowed. "Leave." That single command destroyed what remained of Gareth's confidence. He hurried away without another argument. The Alpha King stepped onto the platform. Suddenly Ava felt as though there was not enough space around her to breathe. Power rolled from him in waves. It was more than physical strength. Something deeper lived beneath it. Something ancient and primal. His unsettling golden eyes examined her. "You're a healer." Ava blinked. Of every possible question he could have asked, she had not expected that. "Yes, my lord." Her voice came out barely louder than a whisper. "I was trained by the elders of the Moonbloom Pack. I know herbs, bone setting, midwifery." A fragile hope opened inside her. Perhaps that was why he had bought her. Perhaps he needed her abilities. Perhaps he looked at her and saw something more useful than a body for labor. "Good." That was all he said. He turned. Rowan, a massive warrior with a scarred face, immediately stepped forward. "My king. Take her to the fortress. Make sure she is fed and cleaned." The Alpha King walked away without another glance. Ava watched him in confusion. "Wait." She stepped forward. "My lord, I can show you." Rowan's hand closed firmly over her shoulder. Ava stopped. "Rule 1, he said quietly. "You do not speak to the Alpha King unless he addresses you." His expression remained professionally blank. "Rule 2, you never look him directly in the eyes." Ava swallowed. "Your property now, girl." Valuable property, apparently, but property all the same. The words struck harder than Ava expected. Still, she nodded. Property. Nothing had truly changed. But Gareth would not be beating her to death in some distant field. The king had valued her skills enough to spend 100 gold, and she was alive. For now, that had to be enough. As Rowan led her from the marketplace, Ava looked back one final time. The Alpha King was already disappearing into the distance. He had saved her. Maybe not because of kindness. Maybe not because he cared whether she lived. But he had saved her. If he wanted a healer, Ava would become the finest healer he had ever known. She had to. It might be the only chance she would ever get. The journey toward the Alpha King's territory seemed endless. Ava's bare feet were still damaged from months in captivity, and the rocky mountain path quickly opened them again. Blood marked several stones behind her. Around her, the king's warriors traveled with effortless strength, shifting between human and wolf whenever the terrain required it. Ava could barely remember what shifting felt like. Months of starvation had weakened her wolf until the creature seemed buried deep inside her, almost beyond reach. Useless Omega, one warrior muttered. Several others laughed. King wasted his gold on that one. He should have left her for the vultures. Ava kept walking. She had heard worse in the slave camps. Yet their contempt somehow cut more deeply. These were the Alpha King's own warriors. If they believed she was worthless, what did that say about the king's decision to buy her? Maybe shifting isn't what she's for, Rowan said. For one small moment, hope returned. Healers got other uses. Like what? One warrior laughed. Healing weaklings who can't handle pain? Real wolves heal themselves, another said. Or they die. Someone else nodded. That's how you keep a pack strong. Ava's stomach tightened. If the Alpha King's warriors despised healing, then what purpose did she have here? She received the answer to nothing. On the third day, her body finally gave up. The mountain tilted beneath her. Ava tried to catch herself. Instead, she crashed face first into the dirt. Laughter reached her through the haze. Should have known she wouldn't last. Weak little Omega can't even walk. Leave her, someone suggested. We've already wasted enough time. Ava tried to push herself upright. Her arms collapsed. Boots approached. She braced for a kick. Or hands grabbing her roughly. Cruelty had become predictable enough that she knew how to prepare for it. But the blow never came. Strong arms slid beneath her instead. Ava was lifted from the ground with surprising gentleness. Then she smelled pine, steel, and something untamed. Her wolf stirred. For the first time in months, the creature truly reacted. Ava opened her eyes. Shock stole the breath from her. The Alpha King was carrying her. He held her as though she weighed nothing, his powerful body moving steadily along the treacherous mountain trail. Ava could feel the controlled strength in his arms. More surprising was the care. Whenever the trail shifted beneath his feet, he adjusted his grip so she would not be jarred. "I'm sorry, my lord," she whispered. He gave no answer. She apologized again. Still nothing. Yet he continued carrying her. Behind them, the mocking warriors had become completely silent. Through half-closed eyes, Ava eventually saw black stone emerging from the mountain mist. A fortress had been carved directly into the mountainside. Sharp towers clawed toward the sky. The structure looked less like a home than a weapon designed to intimidate anyone who approached it. This was the Alpha King's stronghold. When they passed through the enormous gates, Ava understood immediately what kind of world she had entered. Warriors trained in perfect formations throughout the courtyard. Weapons crashed together. Snarls echoed against the walls. Even the children practiced combat forms with wooden swords, their young faces hardened into fierce expressions. No one seemed to smile. No one laughed. Violence seemed woven into the fortress itself. Ava thought it might be the most joyless place she had ever seen. The Alpha King finally lowered her gently onto her feet in the main courtyard. He gestured toward a stern-faced female servant who rushed toward them. Before the woman could lead Ava away, a voice drifted across the courtyard. "Welcome back, nephew." The words sounded smooth. They felt cold. A tall, older warrior approached. His resemblance to the Alpha King was strong enough that they might have been brothers at first glance. But cruelty had settled into every line of the older man's face. His pale eyes moved toward Ava. He looked at her as though assessing spoiled food. "Is this the healer you purchased?" "It is, Uncle Craven." Something in the king's tone changed. Ava could not identify it. Craven's mouth twisted. "And you carried her through the gates where the entire pack could see." The servant took Ava's arm and began pulling her away. But Craven continued. "The pack notices everything you do, nephew, every gesture, every moment of weakness." His voice remained low, but the stone courtyard carried every word. "We cannot afford softness after everything we have done to build our reputation." "She couldn't walk," the king said. "She was weak," Craven interrupted. His pale eyes hardened. "And now everyone has watched their king coddle weakness." The tension between them sharpened. What happens when our enemies hear about this? The servant tightened her grip on Ava and hurried her toward the fortress doors. That was Craven, she whispered. The Pax Beta, the king's uncle. The woman glanced nervously behind them. If you value your life, pray that he forgets you exist. Ava was pulled into the shadows of the fortress. Behind her, the king and Craven continued arguing in voices too low for her to understand. Chapter 2. 3 weeks passed. Ava learned the harsh rhythm of the fortress. Dawn always arrived with weapons crashing in the training courtyard, and warriors snarling as they tested themselves against one another. At midday, servants moved quickly through stone corridors, maintaining the enormous fortress with quiet efficiency. By evening, injured fighters limped back toward their rooms. Ava could see wounds that proper care might have healed much faster. No one asked for help. Instead, Ava scrubbed floors. She tended fires. She cleaned rooms and carried supplies, and despite everything, she remained grateful. She received regular meals. She slept in a warm bed. The work was exhausting, but it was honest. More importantly, no one beat her. After captivity, that alone felt like a luxury. Still, watching others suffer without reason became harder every day. One afternoon, Ava noticed a young warrior struggling with his sword. His shoulder was clearly dislocated from training. She approached slowly. Healing warmth was already gathering in her palms. "Let me help." The warrior recoiled. "Get away from me." He backed against the wall as though Ava were dangerous. "I don't need your Omega weakness." Ava stopped. "But your shoulder." I said no. I could fix it. Fix it? He spat the words. "Real wolves heal themselves or die trying. That's how we become strong." The confrontation attracted attention. Warriors gathered around them. Disgust twisted several faces. A senior fighter pushed through the crowd. "What is this Omega doing?" "Trying to corrupt Dine with healing nonsense," someone answered. "Healing is for the weak," another said. "No real warrior needs it." The senior fighter turned to Ava. "You were bought as a servant, Omega, not as a healer." His expression hardened. "Remember your place." Ava retreated. Shame burned across her face. But confusion hurt worse. If she had been purchased only to serve, why had the king asked whether she was a healer? Why spend 100 gold on someone who could scrub floors? The same thing happened again and again. A kitchen maid burned her hand on a pot. Ava offered assistance. She was accused of encouraging carelessness. A guard developed a festering cut. Ava warned that it could become serious. He lectured her about wolves refusing to coddle small injuries. Every rejection weakened the hope she had carried from the auction. Perhaps she had misunderstood the king entirely. Maybe he had asked about healing merely because he wanted to know everything included in his purchase. But then Ava remembered the mountain. Why had he carried her? Why had a man known for merciless strength treated a servant with such unexpected care? The question stayed with her until she could no longer endure not knowing. One evening, Ava was cleaning the great hall when the Alpha King entered with several advisors. They discussed patrols, supply routes, territory. His voice held the same cold authority Ava remembered from the marketplace, but she heard something beneath it now: exhaustion. A weariness that unexpectedly pulled at her heart. This was her opportunity. She needed answers. "My lord." Ava stepped forward, still clutching her cleaning cloth. Every conversation stopped. The advisors stared at her. Some looked shocked. Others looked furious. The Alpha King's golden eyes moved briefly toward her. Then he looked away. "My lord, I wanted to ask." "How dare you?" One advisor stepped between them. His face flushed with outrage. "A servant does not address the Alpha King." "But I'm a healer," Ava said. Desperation pushed the words out before caution could stop them. "He bought me as a healer. Surely he wants me to." "You are nothing." The advisor's voice dropped into a snarl. "You speak when someone addresses you. Never before. A hand suddenly closed around Ava's shoulder. Rowan. My apologies, Alpha King, he said. The Omega has forgotten her place. The king did not look at Ava. Make sure it doesn't happen again. He continued walking. Within seconds, the discussion resumed as though Ava had never been there. Her heart dropped. Rowan pulled her away while repeating rules she already knew. Ava barely heard him. Frustration burned too fiercely inside her. If no one wanted her to heal, why could they not simply tell her? Why make her believe those abilities mattered? The answer did not come that night. The next morning, everything changed. Ava was sweeping the training courtyard when she heard a terrible crack. She spun around. A boy no older than 12 had crashed during an aerial combat drill. His leg bent at an unnatural angle. The child tried to stand. He collapsed with a scream. Warriors surrounded him. No one moved to help. Pain built character here. Suffering created strength. Then Craven approached. His pale eyes gleamed with brutal satisfaction. Pathetic. He grabbed the injured boy. Before Ava understood what he intended to do, Craven twisted the child's already damaged arm. Another bone snapped. The boy screamed. This, Craven announced to everyone watching, is what weakness looks like. He released the sobbing child. This is what we destroy. Something inside Ava broke. She forgot Rowan's warnings. She forgot her status. She forgot the rules of the fortress. She ran. Stop. Ava dropped beside the child. Healing energy already glowed between her fingers. Warmth flowed from her palms into his damaged body. His sobbing softened. Bones shifted carefully back into alignment. Torn muscles knitted together beneath her hands. The twisted leg slowly straightened. When the healing was complete, the boy stared at her. Confusion and wonder filled his face. He looked like a child hearing kindness spoken in a language he had almost forgotten. What is this? Craven's voice cut through the courtyard. Ava looked up. He towered over her. Rage transformed his face. Behind him, the Alpha King was approaching. His expression revealed nothing. Your Omega pet is defying our ways. Craven spat. He pointed toward Ava. She healed the weakness we were trying to burn out. His voice grew louder. She must be punished. The king stopped. His golden eyes moved first to the boy. The child was sitting upright now. His leg was completely restored. Then he looked at Ava. She remained on her knees, healing light still fading from her hands. Every instinct told her to lower her head. An Omega should have begged. A servant should have apologized. Instead, Ava lifted her chin. She met the Alpha King's eyes directly. If he intended to punish her for saving a child, she would look at him while he did it. His nostrils flared. For one heartbeat, tension sparked between them. Then he spoke. The boy is more useful healed. Craven stared. He can return to training sooner. Craven slammed his fist into the nearest wall. Nephew. The Alpha King turned. You cannot. Enough. Alpha power crashed through the courtyard. Every warrior flinched. The king's voice hardened. Do not question me again. Guards led Ava away. She could feel Craven's hatred following her. But that was not what stayed in her thoughts. It was the Alpha King. For one tiny moment, his mask had shifted. Ava could have sworn she had seen gratitude beneath it. Chapter 3. The days after the courtyard incident felt different. Ava moved through her duties with new purpose. She expected someone to approach her. Surely the king's public defense would change something. Perhaps at last she could prove that the 100 gold spent on her had not been wasted. She thought about the king more frequently than she should have. The way he had examined the boy's healed leg, the careful neutrality of his expression, the fact that he had chosen not to punish her. He could easily have supported his uncle. Instead, he had protected her decision. That had to mean something. Yet no one came. Warriors continued hiding their pain. Servants treated every injury as evidence of weakness. A culture built around suffering could not disappear because of one sentence from the king. Ava tried to remain patient. Maybe change required time. Then, after the evening meal, someone knocked sharply on her door. A guard stood outside. "You're coming with me." Ava set down the cloth she had been mending. "Where?" "The Alpha King wants to speak with you." Her heart seemed to stop. Then it started again twice as fast. Privately? Possibilities raced through her thoughts. Perhaps he finally wanted to discuss her healing work. Or perhaps she was in trouble after all. The guard led Ava into unfamiliar corridors deep within the fortress. They climbed higher. Only important wolves seemed to be permitted here. Eventually, they stopped before enormous oak doors. The guard knocked. "Enter." Ava recognized the voice instantly. The doors opened. The chamber beyond surprised her. Rich tapestries covered the walls. A large fire burned in a hearth wide enough to roast an entire deer. Unlike the rest of the fortress, the room felt warm, comfortable, private, a sanctuary hidden inside a place built around discipline. The Alpha King stood before the fire. He had changed out of his formal clothing and wore simple dark garments. Somehow, that made him appear even more dangerous. Firelight moved over his sharp features as he turned. His golden eyes met Ava's. She quickly remembered herself and lowered her gaze. "You may leave us." The guard bowed. The doors closed. Ava and the king were alone. She stared at her bare feet. Every breath suddenly sounded too loud. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Ava spoke. "You wished to see me, my lord?" "I did." His voice was softer than usual. "About what happened in the courtyard." Ava's stomach tightened. "My lord, You healed him." She hesitated. "Yes. Well." Ava heard him approaching. "The boy will fight again tomorrow." Relief rushed through her. "Thank you, my lord. I only wanted to help." "But that is not our way." His voice changed. Cold authority returned. "Here, strength is earned through pain. Continuing despite injury proves a warrior's worth." Ava stared at him. "You removed that opportunity from him." The words felt like a blow. "My lord, I don't understand." "You defended what I did. I defended the result." The king stood close enough now that Ava felt his warmth. His scent surrounded her. Pine. Steel. That same wild note that made her weakened wolf respond. A healed warrior can return to duty sooner. That makes practical sense. His voice hardened. "It does not mean I approve of the method." Ava curled her fingers into fists. Everything inside her told her to submit. He was the Alpha King. His command was law. But his voice did not match his words. There was reluctance beneath them. "My lord," she said carefully, "I understand that healing is not your way." She slowly raised her eyes. "But surely some suffering serves no purpose." His jaw tightened. If a wound can be healed safely, losing warriors to it cannot make the pack stronger. Something flickered across his face. Pain, or anger. Old enough that Ava knew it had nothing to do with her. The king looked toward the fire. "When I was young, my pack was slaughtered." Ava became completely still. "We were open, trusting." His voice lowered. "We believed in mercy. We helped others. We believed kindness could be strength." His golden gaze returned to her. It made us soft. Ava held her breath. We were unprepared. When the attack came, we fell like wheat before a scythe. She could almost picture the boy he must have been. A child surrounded by death. A child learning that softness meant losing everyone he loved. "My uncle saved me," he continued. "Craven and a handful of survivors." His expression hardened again. "We swore we would never repeat those mistakes." He stepped closer. "We would remain strong, always." Alpha power filled the space between them. We would never display weakness for our enemies to exploit. His gaze locked onto Ava. Do you understand? The pressure of his authority urged her to bow. Beneath it, Ava heard something else. The memory of a frightened boy who had once watched his entire world disappear. Yes, my lord. Her voice was quiet. For a long moment, he studied her. Something in his expression softened. We will use your abilities only for true emergencies. Ava looked up sharply. When a warrior's life is genuinely at risk, he continued, not for injuries that can recover naturally. Hope flared. It was far less than she had wanted. But it was something. A chance. Thank you, my lord. She bowed deeply. I understand. Ava turned toward the doors. Emergency cases. She could work with that. She could prove. Ava. Her name in his voice stopped her. She turned. Yes, my lord. The room suddenly felt more intimate than before. Firelight moved between them. The king's carefully built walls seemed thinner here. You should avoid my uncle. Ava's hope vanished into caution. Craven does not share my practical opinion regarding your abilities. His voice was quiet. Serious. It would be wise to remain out of his way. Oh. Ava did not know why the warning disappointed her. Yes, my lord. I understand. She curtsied. Then she hurried from his chambers before nervousness made her say something foolish. For the next several days, Ava tried to obey. Whenever she saw an injury that she knew she could heal, she turned away. When warriors passed her limping, she kept her hands locked behind her back. Then a young she-wolf crashed during an aerial combat drill. Ava heard screaming. She ran toward the training ground. The girl lay in a pool of blood. Her leg had twisted badly. Bone protruded through the skin. Blood continued spreading across the stone. Ava knew immediately. Without help, the young wolf could die. This qualified as an emergency. Exactly as the king had described. Ava did not hesitate. She dropped beside the girl. Healing light poured from her palms. Bone slid carefully back into position. Muscle repaired itself. Skin sealed over the wound. The screaming faded into small, confused whimpers. Within moments, the girl stared down at a perfectly restored leg. How dare you? Craven's voice cracked across the training ground. Ava looked up. He was walking rapidly toward her. His pale eyes burned with fury. This Omega defies us again. Warriors gathered. She infects our people with weakness. Craven continued raging. But Ava's attention moved beyond him. High above the courtyard, the Alpha King stood on a balcony. He was watching. Their eyes met. Only for a second. Yet Ava saw something that made her breath catch. Approval. Satisfaction. And beneath both, unmistakable warmth. He was proud of her. No matter what he had said in his chambers. No matter how loudly Craven condemned her. The Alpha King was pleased that she had saved the girl. Understanding struck Ava with sudden clarity. The conflict was not simply between her healing and the fortress traditions. It existed inside the king himself. Between what he had been taught to believe and what he actually felt. Perhaps Ava was not the only person beginning to change. Chapter 4. 1 week later, Ava woke to boots thundering over stone. She joined servants gathering along the battlements. Below them, hundreds of warriors assembled in the courtyard. What's happening? Ava asked a maid as they hurried outside. The woman stared at her. You haven't heard? She pointed toward the army. The king leaves for battle today. Some warriors stood in human form wearing polished armor. Others had already shifted. Huge wolves filled the courtyard, eyes burning like embers. At the front sat the Alpha King on a black destrier. Dark armor fitted his powerful frame. When he addressed his soldiers, his voice carried across the entire stronghold. He spoke of strength, duty, honor. Hundreds of warriors answered with roaring voices and howls. Ava remained on the battlements until the final soldier disappeared beyond the gates. Something heavy settled in her chest. She could not name it. In the following days, with the king away, another change began. A kitchen maid approached Ava first. The girl cradled a burned hand. "Please." She glanced around nervously. "It hurts. The cook says if I can't work, I'll be sent away." Ava looked at the blistered skin. She thought about the king's rules. Emergencies only. Then she looked at the frightened servant. Ava healed her. Relief transformed the girl's expression. Word spread quietly. The Omega could help. And more importantly, she would. A stable boy came with a leg injured by a kick. A seamstress arrived with fingers damaged by hurried needlework. A guard showed Ava an infected cut. None of these injuries met the king's definition of an emergency. Ava knew that. But each person came asking for help. How could she refuse them? And every time she healed someone, she noticed something else happening. Servants started smiling. Occasional laughter drifted through corridors that had once carried only commands. Children who had hidden quietly in corners began playing in the courtyards. Their giggles echoed against stone walls that had heard little joy. The change spread. Slowly, almost invisibly at first. A trainer who once kicked fallen recruits began reaching down to help them stand. Warriors became less eager to punish every mistake. Even the fortress itself seemed lighter. Weapons still crashed in the courtyards. Training continued. But music began drifting from the great hall. People spoke quietly in gardens. Ava moved through the fortress with growing confidence. Her healing touched one life after another. For the first time since her pack had fallen, she felt useful, needed, alive. One concern never disappeared. What would happen when the Alpha King returned? Would he notice the joy? Or would he see exactly what Craven had warned him about? Weakness. She received the answer 3 weeks later. Ava woke in the middle of the night to emergency horns. Not the victorious call of returning soldiers. A desperate warning. She threw on a cloak and rushed outside. People gathered in the courtyard. 3 riders came through the gates. Their wolves were covered in sweat and foam. The Alpha King led them. His armor was dented. Blood covered parts of it. His golden eyes looked wild. "Where is she?" His roar shook the courtyard. "Where is the healer?" Ava pushed through the crowd. "I'm here." The king saw her. Relief immediately crossed his face. Up close, Ava noticed the exhaustion carved into his features. His hands were trembling. "My uncle." His voice had become rough. "He's dying." Ava's stomach tightened. Silver weapons, poisoned blades. His wolf cannot heal it. The king swallowed. "He won't survive being carried back here." "How far away?" 2 hours. Ava immediately understood. Too far for an ordinary horse. "You can ride with me," the king said. "I'll shift and carry you." Ava hesitated. "My lord, I can shift." His expression changed. "I'm fast enough. I can keep pace." Surprise flickered through his eyes. Then something that looked almost like approval. The king shifted first. The transformation was magnificent and frightening. Bone cracked. Muscle reshaped. Where the man had stood, an enormous black wolf appeared. Ava forced herself to reach for the wolf buried inside her. Her shift hurt more. Months of starvation had left her weak. But urgency gave her strength. Soon, a smaller silver wolf stood beside the enormous black one. They ran. The pace was brutal. The Alpha King covered ground with terrifying ease. Ava forced herself to remain beside him. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed for rest. She kept moving. Someone's life depended on her. They finally reached a makeshift camp beside a stream. Warriors stood around it with grim expressions. Craven lay motionless on pine branches. His breathing was so faint Ava almost could not see it. She shifted immediately. There was no time for embarrassment. Ava was naked, but saving Craven mattered more. The king shifted beside her. Without hesitation, He removed his long campaign cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. Then he took Ava to his uncle. She knelt. I don't know if I can save him. Healing light already appeared in her palms. The wounds were worse than anything Ava had treated before. Try, the king said. He sat beside her. The healing lasted for hours. Ava poured everything she had into Craven. Silver poison fought her every step. She drew it out slowly. Drop after poisonous drop. Torn flesh closed thread by thread. The Alpha King stayed beside her throughout the entire struggle. He never complained. Never left. His presence became something steady that Ava could hold on to whenever exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Eventually, her strength gave out. Ava sagged. Craven's breathing had become steady. Healthy color returned to his face. The poisonous silver was gone. His wounds were sealed. Life flowed strongly through him again. You did it. The king's voice shook slightly. His hand closed around hers. You saved him. For a moment, neither of them moved. They sat together beneath the fading darkness before dawn. Ava's hand disappeared inside his much larger one. Both were exhausted, both trembling with relief. Then Craven opened his eyes. Everything changed. His pale gaze moved around the camp. He saw his healed body, Ava's hands. The king beside her. Understanding appeared. Then horror. What have you done? Craven struggled upright. What have you done to me? She saved your life, the king answered. His voice remained tightly controlled. You were dying, uncle. You should have let me die. Craven's rage erupted. My death would have driven our warriors forward. It would have fed their anger for the final assault. He pointed furiously at Ava. Instead, you've weakened all of us with this Omega's tainted healing. The king became very still. You believe I should have allowed you to die so our soldiers would become angry? Yes. Craven forced himself to his feet. That is strength. That is leadership. Silence followed. The Alpha King studied the man who had raised him. Finally, he spoke. I see. Ava watched him carefully. Perhaps you're right. Her chest tightened. Perhaps I have become too soft. The king looked toward her. Something like apology appeared in his eyes. Return to the fortress, healer. Ava stared. We'll discuss this once you've recovered. My lord. Go. This time his voice was gentle. I need to speak privately with my uncle. Ava gathered the cloak around herself. Before shifting for the journey back, she glanced at Craven. He was staring directly at her. Hatred burned in his pale eyes so intensely that Ava stepped backward without meaning to. This was not finished. Saving Craven had not changed him. In his mind, Ava's healing was not a gift. It threatened everything he believed. Chapter 5. The fortress changed again after the king returned. The warmth that had slowly grown while he was away began fading. Watchful eyes returned. So did warnings whispered in corridors. Craven moved through the fortress like a predator searching for weakness. His pale gaze seemed to notice everything. Still, people continued coming to Ava. Now they came secretly. A servant arrived with a twisted ankle. A guard brought a festering wound. A kitchen maid needed her shaking hands healed before she could work. Ava helped every one of them, but the happiness surrounding her work had disappeared. Instead of open gratitude, people offered nervous smiles before hurrying away. 3 weeks passed after the night she saved Craven. The Alpha King never spoke to her. Ava sometimes saw him. He crossed the courtyard with advisors, reviewed reports in the Great Hall, trained with his warriors, but his golden eyes never found hers. He behaved as though the hours they had spent beside the stream had never happened. Ava remembered everything. The desperate run through the forest. The hours of healing while the king sat beside her. His hand squeezing hers after Craven survived. The warmth in his eyes. Most of all, Ava remembered his campaign cloak. The way he had immediately covered her after she shifted back to human form. Even in a desperate situation, he had treated her body with respect. The memory made warmth rise into her cheeks. Then one evening, while Ava watched him across the great hall, the truth finally became impossible to ignore. She had feelings for him. The realization struck with frightening force. He stood among his captains discussing military strategy. His voice carried the authority she knew so well, and Ava's heart reacted to every movement. This was dangerous, ridiculous. She was his servant. A slave purchased at an auction. Someone who technically belonged to him. None of that seemed to matter to her heart. Late that night, long after the fortress settled into silence, someone knocked on Ava's door. She opened it. Craven stood outside. Torchlight reflected in his pale eyes. "The king wants to see you." Ava's heart jumped. Then caution immediately followed. Something about Craven's voice felt wrong. Colder than usual. "Now, my lord. It's quite late. Now." He turned away. "Follow me." Ava obeyed. Craven led her through corridors she had never entered. Then downward. Stone steps descended deeper beneath the fortress. The air became colder. Damp. Ava's uneasiness grew. The dungeons. Why would the Alpha King ask to see her there? "Is someone injured?" Ava asked. "A prisoner who needs healing?" Craven gave no answer. They entered a round stone chamber. Empty cells surrounded the room. Several guards waited inside. Iron helmets hid their faces. Ava looked around. There was no injured prisoner, no wounded warrior, and no king. Slowly, she faced Craven. "My lord, where is the Alpha King?" Craven smiled. "He isn't coming." Ice seemed to crawl through Ava's body. The guards moved closer. Their hands rested on weapons. Ava understood. She was trapped. "You're going to disappear tonight," Craven said calmly. His tone made the threat more frightening. "Perhaps there will be an unfortunate accident." He shrugged. "Or perhaps you will wander away, desert your responsibilities." He smiled again. "Slaves do that sometimes." Ava backed toward the stone wall. "Please." Her voice shook. "I haven't done anything wrong." Craven's expression sharpened. "I only wanted to help." "Help?" His voice cracked through the chamber. "You call what you've done help?" He stepped closer. "You made them soft." Another step. "Dependent." Another. "Weak." Ava saw something beyond cruelty in his eyes now. Fanatical certainty. He truly believed every word. "You are poison," Craven said. "Rot spreading through everything we built." "My lord, I only heal people. And that is exactly why you must die." Craven lunged. Ava screamed. She tried to move sideways. There was nowhere to escape. His hands closed around her throat. The pressure was immediate. Terrible. Ava clawed at his wrists. Her vision began darkening. Then the chamber exploded with sound. The Alpha King came through the entrance like a force of destruction. His golden eyes blazed. His roar shook dust loose from the ceiling. One glance took in everything. Ava against the wall. Craven's hands around her neck. Armed guards surrounding them. "Let her go." The command carried the full force of his alpha power. Craven released Ava. She collapsed against the wall, gasping, but Craven showed no regret. "She is poison, nephew." His voice remained furious. "She will destroy us if we allow her to remain alive." The king stepped forward. "I already told you." His voice was dangerously quiet. "She stays." "And I told you that cannot happen." Craven's control finally shattered. "Look at yourself." He pointed at the king. "Look at what she has done to you." His voice rose. "You've become weak. Our enemies will smell it on you like blood and water. Using our resources intelligently is not weakness. It is madness." Craven spat the words. "She made you forget what you are." The king's expression darkened. "You are the Alpha King," Craven continued. not some lovesick fool staring after an omega. The words hung in the chamber. Ava's face burned, partly from shame, partly from something more dangerous. Hope. Or terror. Perhaps both. The Alpha King stared at his uncle. You've lost all reason. His voice was low. This has gone too far. Too far? Craven laughed bitterly. I raised you from nothing. He struck his chest with one hand. I saved you when your parents' weakness would have gotten you killed. The king remained motionless. I made you strong, Craven said. I made you king. His hand moved toward his belt. And this is how you repay me? A dagger slid free. Ava recognized the strange, oily gleam along the blade. Poison. The same kind that had almost killed Craven. If you refuse to be the king I created, Craven said almost sadly, perhaps we need new leadership. He attacked. The blade drove straight toward the Alpha King's heart. The king reacted faster. He caught Craven's wrist. Twisted. The dagger struck the floor. Then uncle and nephew collided. Teacher and student. The man who had raised the king against the boy who had grown powerful enough to rule an empire. Their skill was nearly equal. But the king was younger, stronger. He should have overwhelmed Craven. Then the guards attacked. For the true Alpha, a sword flashed toward the king. For strength. Another guard lunged from behind. There were 5 of them against 1. Still, the Alpha King fought with terrifying power. His claws ripped through armor. One warrior flew across the chamber after a single strike. Another crashed into stone. But there were too many attackers. A blade cut the king. Then another. He staggered. He did not fall. His golden eyes burned brighter. Ava watched in horror. Even wounded, he looked unstoppable. Furious. Magnificent. And surrounded. Then Ava saw Craven behind him. He had recovered the poisoned dagger. Look out! Ava screamed. Too late. Craven drove the blade between the king's ribs. It slipped through a gap in his armor with horrifying precision. The king froze. Shock filled his eyes. Blood appeared at his lips. Something else awakened behind his golden gaze. Something terrible. Craven stared at him. I'm sorry. His voice broke. I'm sorry it had to happen this way. The dagger remained buried between them. But I won't let you destroy everything we built. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other. The man who had raised him. The man who had just tried to kill him. Then the king's claws extended. So am I. His hand moved once. Fast. Precise. His claws drove through Craven's chest. Craven's eyes widened. The life in them vanished. His body fell backward. The sound of him hitting the stone floor echoed through the chamber. The king swayed. That final strike had taken what little strength remained. His eyes rolled back. Ava rushed forward. He collapsed into her arms. The poison was already spreading. His skin began turning the same sick gray Ava remembered seeing on Craven. His breathing became shallow, irregular. Ava could feel his life disappearing beneath her hands. No. Healing light immediately flared from her palms. No, I won't let you die. She pressed her hands over the wound. Not like this. But even as her power flowed into him, Ava understood how serious the poisoning was. She had saved Craven once. This time, she did not know whether she had enough strength left. Chapter 6. They carried the Alpha King to his chambers. Loyal guards and terrified servants rushed through the fortress corridors. Ava never released his hand. Healing energy continued flowing from her even while they climbed the winding stairs. Before they reached his chambers, the news had already spread. Craven was dead. The king was dying. Everything the fortress had known seemed to be collapsing at once. Ava did not care about any of it. Her world had narrowed to one thing: the weak rise and fall of the king's chest. The gray pallor spreading over his skin. They placed him carefully on the enormous bed. Ava immediately knelt beside him, both hands pressed against his chest. She poured power into him. The silver poison resisted. Her healing met it like silk being burned by acid. Every time Ava forced part of it back, another wave seemed to spread deeper. Hours passed. Servants entered silently. They brought food. Ava did not touch it. They brought water. She drank almost nothing. Rowan remained at the doorway. Concern hardened his scarred face. Ava never stopped. She could not. Because somewhere during those endless hours, another truth became perfectly clear. She loved him. Not merely the Alpha King whose name inspired fear throughout the territories. Not the ruthless conqueror from the stories. She loved the man beneath those things. The man who had lifted a starving Omega from a mountain path instead of leaving her in the dirt. The man who had stayed beside her through hours of healing when his uncle was dying. The man who had covered her body with his cloak without making her feel ashamed. The man who sometimes looked at her as though she mattered, as though she was more than something he had bought. Ava loved his strength, and the gentleness he fought so hard to hide. Now she was going to lose him. Please. Tears ran freely down Ava's face. Healing light trembled between her hands. Please don't leave me. The king's breathing weakened. I need you. Her voice broke. We all need you. His lips moved. No sound came at first. Then Ava realized what he was trying to say. Her name. Ava. His eyelids fluttered without opening. He hovered somewhere between life and death. I'm here. Ava leaned closer. I'm right here. I won't leave you. His hand moved weakly. Ava caught it. She squeezed his fingers. Then she made a desperate decision. Healing energy alone was failing. So she gave more. Her own life force flowed into the healing light. Dangerous. Possibly fatal. Ava did not care. She poured everything she had into him. For several terrible moments nothing changed. Then the poison broke. The resistance inside his body suddenly collapsed like a dam. Ava's healing rushed through him. Silver corruption washed away. The gray faded from his skin. His breathing deepened. Color slowly returned to his face. Ava felt the last of her strength disappear. She collapsed beside the bed. But he was breathing. He was alive. Dawn had begun brightening the tall windows when the Alpha King finally opened his eyes. For several seconds he stared upward as though he did not understand where he was. Then his gaze moved. He found Ava. Ava. This time his voice was clear. Strong. She almost cried from relief. I'm sorry. The words rushed out of her. This was my fault. His expression changed. If I had listened, if I had stayed where I belonged. Stop. His hand found hers. Do not blame yourself for his choices. But, my lord. Ava shook her head. I brought division into your pack. I caused conflict between you and your family. You brought healing. The king forced himself higher against the pillows. Ava's tears continued falling. Your uncle is dead because of me. He is dead because he chose hatred instead of hope. His thumb moved slowly across her knuckles. I've been watching you. Ava looked at him. During these past weeks, his golden eyes held hers. I saw what you changed. He paused. The servants smile now. A small warmth touched his expression. The children laugh. Ava remained silent. You were right, he said. About suffering. The admission seemed difficult. Pain without purpose isn't strength. He looked toward the window. Its cruelty dressed up as tradition. Ava thought of Craven. Of the child in the courtyard. Of every wounded warrior who had been told to suffer. My uncle and I held onto our pain because we thought it protected us. The king's voice softened. We believed fear kept us strong. He looked at Ava again. But all it truly did was keep us afraid. You aren't afraid. Ava spoke without thinking. A bitter smile touched his mouth. I was terrified. She blinked. Of weakness. he continued, of becoming like my parents, of making the same mistakes that led to their deaths. His gaze dropped briefly. But suffering simply because we can endure it is not strength. Ava listened. It's only suffering. His voice grew steadier. Real strength is choosing to heal when hurting would be easier. He raised one hand and gently cupped Ava's cheek. To build instead of destroy. Ava's breath caught. My lord. Cain. She stared at him. He smiled faintly. My name is Cain. Something about hearing the name felt far more intimate than any title. Cain, Ava whispered. His thumb brushed her cheek. Thank you. His voice was barely above a murmur. For saving me. A pause. For saving all of us. He pulled her carefully into his arms. Ava rested against him, frightened she might hurt wounds that had only just healed. His embrace remained gentle. Ava. He spoke her name beside her ear. My fierce little healer. His arms tightened. My heart. Cain leaned toward her. His lips met hers. The kiss was soft, almost reverent, as though he feared she might break beneath too much pressure. Ava answered. Her hands rose into his dark hair. The restraint between them dissolved. Cain deepened the kiss with desperate tenderness, like a man who had nearly lost something before understanding how precious it had become. Epilogue. Spring arrived at the mountain fortress. With it came transformation. Gardens of medicinal herbs now grew where empty ground once surrounded the training yards. Weapons still clashed throughout the courtyards. Warriors still trained. Strength had not disappeared. But now laughter accompanied the sound of steel. Encouragement replaced many of the insults that had once filled the air. Warriors who had previously been taught only to dominate began learning something else. How to protect. How to defend. How to understand that strength meant more than defeating someone weaker. Cain changed with his pack. His power had not diminished. If anything, he seemed stronger than before. But his strength was no longer ruled entirely by fear. Wisdom tempered it. Once, his wolves had obeyed because they were afraid of disappointing him. Now they followed because they respected him. Young wolves no longer lowered their heads and hurried away whenever Cain approached. They sought his advice. They knew their alpha king could offer both strength and mercy. The entire fortress seemed easier to breathe in. Music drifted from the great hall. Pups ran laughing through corridors where harsh commands had once echoed. Even the black stone seemed warmer, as if the change spreading through the pack had somehow entered the walls themselves. Then came the night of the full moon. The entire pack gathered in the courtyard beneath silver light. Cain stood before them. Ava was beside him. He reached for her hand. The Alpha King, who had once believed kindness was weakness, looked at her now without hiding what he felt. You came here as a servant, he said. His deep voice carried across the courtyard. Ava remembered the auction platform, the shackles, the buyers who had looked through her. But you freed all of us. Cain's fingers tightened gently around hers. You taught us that strength is not measured by how many people we can defeat. He looked across his pack. It is measured by how many we are strong enough to protect. His attention returned to Ava. You did more than heal our wounds. His voice softened. You healed our hearts. Under the light of the full moon, Cain marked Ava as his mate. His bite was gentle. A promise. Their wolves reached for one another beneath the moonlight, black and silver, strength and mercy, two forces that had once seemed impossible to unite, finally standing together as one.